All right, good morning, ladies and gents. My name is Parr, coming to you from Central Michigan with Parr's Outdoors. Today is August 19th. It was a beautiful morning this morning. It was a whopping 47 degrees out, so we're starting to get that fall feel in the air, and we are extremely ready to be in a tree stand. I have been in the hunting mood for 3 or 4 weeks now. So today is a very special day. Super excited about it. I'm taking off this morning to go meet up with our youth hunter for the year. So last season, this is actually, I started this back in 2020, so this is my 4th year, and started taking kids out in the youth hunt. Started off with my niece and my nephew, and then another relative which was my cousin's son, and then last year I reached out on Facebook to see if I could find any local young boys or girls that wanted to be in the outdoors. And so put a big post out on Facebook. It reached way more people than I ever possibly could have imagined. And we found 2 kids last year. It was fantastic. They were great young gentlemen. We did not have a successful hunt, but we had a great time. We saw lots of deer. The biggest buck I've ever seen on public land I saw last year in the youth hunt. So it was absolutely awesome. But in that process, I had another gentleman reach out. And so this is kind of the direction I was hoping to go with this. Somebody that wants to be in the outdoors, somebody who has that ambition, that drive, and the passion for it, but doesn't have the ability. And so that is, I had a gentleman reach out and asking if it was a possibility to line me up for. This was last year, to line up for this year. And so I told him, let's wait and see when we get closer. Well, here we are. We are 20 days away from the youth hunt, something like that. And we're going to go meet him this afternoon. So we're going to pick him up today at his house. We're going to drive around. We're going to do some scouting. We're going to go walk a bunch of public land. We're going to put some trail cameras out. We're going to come back here. We're going to do some shooting. And so I'm going to try to give this kid the full experience. We're going to get together a couple more times between now and the youth hunt. And then just really hoping that we can get this kid on some deer and maybe get him his first harvest. So super excited. It's going to be a great day. I'm going to take you guys along. This is going to be like a 3 or 4 video series. I'm going to go over the bare basics. So not only is this gentleman going to get the education, but I'm hoping that if you have a child that is wired to be in the outdoors and ready to go and eager to learn, that they can watch this. It's just going to be the bare basics of the outdoors and what to look for, what to do, scouting, gear, shooting 101, kind of why we do it, the reasons we hunt. So yeah, we're gonna go over all that. If you enjoy this and you look forward to deer season as much as we do, please just jump on our YouTube channel and like and subscribe. That's Parr's Outdoor Adventures, and tag along with us on some of our fun that we have. I have a super packed season this year, and we are ready for it. I'm gonna jump in the truck now. We're gonna go ahead and take off and go pick up Cameron and go have a great day doing some scouting and some learning. Alrighty, as you can see, I left this morning, went and picked up Cameron, and we have been scouting all morning. So picked you up at 10. It's now almost 3 o'clock, and we've been in the woods, put miles on, put on like seven and a half, something like that, miles today. You liking the spots we found?
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, sweet. So your name's Cameron.
Yep.
Tell us about yourself, man. Like, what do you do? What are some of your hobbies?
Really just a lot of football right now. Getting into school, starting soon. I got school on Monday, so won't have much free time after school and football, so excited to get out there and hunt soon.
Why?
Spots are looking good.
Sweet. What got you into hunting, and like what?
Just kind of got to try everything,
Yeah.
Haven't done it, so I might as well try. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't. I don't know how patient I'll be. I'm not the best sitter.
That's completely fine. What was your just first initial thought on like this aspect, this side of the hunting today, like just the scouting side?
A lot of, no, not miserable, but I would say it's a lot of like luck, really. The more you go out there, the more you see. You gotta kind of pick the spots where you have the best chance, but you're not guaranteed anything, really. So try and find the best spot for your trail cam or something, and then hope you get lucky and see one.
Exactly. So it's funny, I talk about this all the time, like in the outdoor world, is like you can be as good as they get as hunting, right? You can be one of the best in the world. There's still a whole lot of luck involved. So it's a lot like fishing, right? So like a good fisherman has the skill level between somebody who's never fished before and somebody who fishes all the time is insane. And there's a whole lot of skill to it, but at the same time, there's a whole lot of luck involved too. Hunting's the same exact way. So we can know you can know how to read all the sign, you can put all the effort in, but if for some reason that deer doesn't want to get up and move, that's not on you. I mean, scouting ain't gonna get a buck on his feet in daylight. So we're gonna start right off right here with scouting. Some of the things we went over today. First thing is locations that we started to scout. Remember what I told you right off the bat this morning on what we were looking for to be close to?
The corn.
Looking for food, so looking for eggs. So in the spring like this, a lot of times your deer are real close to your food sources, even on public land. So if you can find public that has a food source, an egg field, either your public fields are planted, the state allows they lease that to a farmer, or if because like 90% of Michigan is not like that. So there's a few, and I'm sure we'll see them at some point while we're out driving around and looking at stuff. But there's a few pieces of public here that the fields on the public are actually farmed, and the state leases those to a farmer. He pays to farm that land, just like any other, if somebody owns 40 acres and it's mostly field, they can lease that to a farmer. So if you can either find that or find public that butts up to an egg field. I'm not saying, I will clarify this, I'm not saying hunt the line, because I try not to do that ever. But just so you know where that food source is coming from. In early season, that seems to be a huge benefit for me that we've seen over the last few years. So that transitions too. So like this time of year, that's what I would look for. Now when you get into like October and November, and you start looking the end of October into November, I'm looking for areas, a lot of edges, or what I would consider a pinch point. So like something that's going to force those deer down into a narrow area. And I don't necessarily mean that like I'm not meaning like two great big ravines and they have to walk the bottom of it. I mean like if you have water on one side and maybe a big ridge and they'll walk in between that, or a saddle. So like if you have a great big hill, do you know what a saddle is as far as like a land feature? So a saddle is, let's say you have a ridge that runs like this, but there's a dip in the middle of it, so just like a horse saddle where you would sit in. That's exactly the point. Those deer don't want to walk over the highest point, they want to walk over the lowest point. So that's another good thing to look for. So today we didn't really use pinch points, but we used a different tactic today of looking, which was we jumped in the creek and we started walking down the creek. That is one of my favorite like early season tactics like that to find deer in their travel corridors, is to jump in a creek if you got a creek on the public and just get in it and walk it right down in the water and start looking for crossings and everything else. And I always feel like I find a lot of sign right there on that. One, it's hot out, the deer are spending a lot of time around it, and it's usually blatantly obvious where they're crossing. End of the year, food source. When it comes to December time frame and it's like late rifle season or something like that, food source is what you have to have and be looking for. So that might be along with that, this kind of goes hand in hand, is cover. So they got to have something where they feel hidden, because you have no leaves on anything, all of your shrubbery, all your grass is laid down, they stick out like a sore thumb in the snow. So to have a spot that has cover, but along with that, we talked about browse, right? We looked at some of those plants that, I mean, every single leaf is just nipped right off. And so it's the same thing late season. It's not going to be green, but a lot of the times, like trees have rebudded already. Once they drop, they start to rebud. Those buds get frozen, and they will eat the daylights out of that. And I even had, like back here, we logged, we did that in February, and as those trees came down, right, there's nothing on the end of them, they were eating those branches off until they were the size of a dime. They're just gnawing on wood, trying to get all that nutrients that they could, because there's no food anywhere else. So So kind of hand in hand is cover. There's food in that for them. And then if there's a good food source, if there's corn somewhere, if you can see a field where you got deer out in it at night pawing around, stuff like that, being in that area late season is important. When to scout, I picked midday today. We didn't actually go over this at all, but I picked midday today for a very specific reason, because I like to know where deer bed. So based off of the information that we got today and what we saw walking around, we were never in a good bedding area today, because if we were, we would have been bumping deer. So that's what I like to know, is I want to get in there midsummer like this and push those deer around. I want to know where those deer are bedding. When we walk out, we come back in a week, all those deer are going to be back in there. This time of the year, it doesn't matter that awful much, because I don't have that much human pressure. But summer like this, I like to scout midday, and then as we get later into the year, I will stick to midday, but I usually make it quick. If I'm hunting during, or if I'm scouting during season, I'm usually I'm speed walking through things, and I'm just looking for quick rut sign, scrapes, rubs, like we talked about. And usually, like, I'll do that behind my house right here. I'll run a quick little loop around late October, and I'll find the fresh hit scrapes and stuff like that, set my cameras on them, and get out. So, all right, so major things that we're looking for when it comes to scouting, and where we're going to set up at, because scouting is probably the most important thing, the most important part of deer hunting, because if you don't put in you don't put in the right amount of miles, and you don't know where those deer are at, it doesn't do you any good to be hunting if you don't know there's deer around. So major things you're looking for, kind of went over today: heavy crossings, right? Finding good trails, knowing distinct where bedding is, where food is. We found today where we had all those crossings on the river or the creek. We know bedding's on the other side of that and down in that swamp, and then we know where that main food source is, or that bean field. So we're just setting ourselves halfway in between, and that is probably the most common technique when it comes to hunting whitetails, is that know where bedding is, know where food's at, you get in the middle of it. Hunting over food can be really good if you have access and ability to do that. On public land, you usually don't have that ability though. So being that halfway in between point is probably your number one tactic on public. On private, you can be over the food, but if you're looking for like a mature buck, you're probably not going to find them over the food source. You're going to find them down in the woods more with that cover. They'll come out to the food after dark. They're not going to be out there in the middle of daylight. So other things to look for, if you're going back during the rut. The rut here in central Michigan is usually bucks will start hitting scrapes pretty hard, like the last week in October. You'll start seeing like heavy rutting activity, as far as like chasing and more fighting and stuff like that will all happen in that first week to 2 weeks of November. So that's like prime deer hunting, is when the deer are going to be on their feet the most in the daylight. So wind. All right. So wind direction, the number one thing that'll stop you from getting a deer is wind, because their noses are their best friend. That is what saves more deer lives than anything else out there, is their nose. So we will go over this a lot more when we kind of have our spot picked out that we're going the first day, but that spot will be determined off of the wind. So wherever we get pictures, we'll take those pictures, we'll look at when they're coming through morning and night, and then we will figure out what the wind's going to be probably like the night before. That'll be the most accurate, and then from there we'll put our game plan together of where exactly we're going to sit. You want the wind in your face, blowing you away from the deer, but you also want to consider, right? So like we talked about the bedding, and if it's a morning hunt, you don't want your scent blowing into that food source, because that's where your deer are going to be coming from. And so we'll plan like how we get in. We might not walk down that big main trail. We might have to circle out and around, just depending on which direction the wind's from, and how to get back in there. But we'll use the wind. We will always have the wind to our advantage. You never want the wind blowing at the deer. So, and we'll go over that, like I said, probably the night before. I'll be messaging you, and we'll be talking back and forth of, we're going, here's kind of our options, here's the spots we have picked. these are the deer we're seeing here, and the wind direction is supposed to be, X, Y, or Z in the morning, and then we can pick from that, and then plan how we're going to get in and out. So, I think that's the bare basics of scouting. I mean, there's not anything too crazy about it, but like I said today, it's the most important part of scouting is boots on the ground, out there walking, which we did a whole lot of walking for 3 spots. We put cameras out that we were comfortable putting cameras out. We're gonna have deer on camera. So there's only one spot we went today that I have ever walked before too, so like I said, it's just as new to me as it is to you seeing that. So that pretty much covers the bare nitty-gritty basics of scouting. Do you have any questions or things that we did today that you don't know why we did it or what we were looking for?
Not really. No.
Not really.
No
Nothing major.
questions.
Was there what caught your interest the most? Like what that we went over stood out the most that felt like was the most important?
The trails, finding the crossings and the trails where a bunch of trails meet up from the bed to the food. Because just the more chances of seeing a deer, you got more chances to get one.
Right.
If you see none, you can't get any.
That's pretty much it. So that's like the big thing, is again, I'll hit it one more time, is there's gotta be deer there to kill one. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just walk out and sit down anywhere. You might get lucky and hit it on the head, but I feel like, when we broke the spot that we found, when we really sat there and broke that down and we stood next to that tree of this is probably where we'll set up if we're gonna sit here, and there was 3, 4, 5 crossings right there in that section, and they're all coming down to that one point. That's what we're looking for. And like I said, that's it. I mean, I said at the first spot we went that we walked around, we found a tree stand, we found a trail camera, we found 2 mock scrapes, and 0 deer sign. I was like, this is pointless, let's get out of here. But I said at that one, on a whole giant chunk of public, there might be one spot that you want to be. You might be able to kill deer in other spots, but that one spot where it's going to give you the best opportunity. And I think we found that spot on that chunk for sure. So
Definitely.
yeah. All right. That was a great day. Fun 7.5 miles. And we're going to jump right over. Let's chat about gear for a second. And then we're going to jump over and do some shooting. The fun part. The actual fun part. That's actually engaging instead of
Walking around looking at sticks and mud
and leaves and getting my feet all wet. I'm soaked, got holes in my boots. But so gear. A big thing in the hunting industry is everybody preaches on what camo you got to wear and what scent protection you got to use and
fancy gear.
It's just fancy gear, man. You can kill big bucks and you can kill deer in shorts and a t-shirt. So. That being said, literally, if you just wear dark clothes,
don't wear neon yellow.
Even if you wear neon yellow. I mean, we wear neon orange during hunting season. We will have neon orange hat and vest on when we sit. They're not gonna. They really don't pay attention to it. What deer pick up mostly is movement, and so sitting still is probably the most important thing. If we can have, we'll probably put something up. We'll build some sort of little sticks in front of us. To help break up our outline, because what a deer really picks out the most is the head and shoulders of a person. That's the most non-natural looking part of a human. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you can go like this and you just look like a tree, but it's that head and shoulder outline that they pick up on. So, and like I said, movement. So we'll put up something a good in order, instead of having top-notch, expensive, crazy camouflage. If you can have a little bit of front cover and a backdrop, you're golden. You can wear black. You don't need to wear a face mask. You don't got to wear anything crazy. Movement. And so one thing, that being said, one thing is I don't wear a ball cap when I hunt, because when I move, I now have a much bigger radius of movement. Yeah. And so I just wear a beanie all the time, because that way when my head rotates like that, you can't pick up movement. If it's dark and all you see is a circle turning, you can't see that ball turning. If it's got a great big bill sticking out, you can see that. So that's one thing that I do, is just trying to cover up those little bit of extra movement. But yeah, boots, waterproof boots, not Holy waterproof boots.
Nice pair of boots. Oh,
That's
wow.
right. Yep. Yeah, use some waterproof boots, some dark clothes, a weapon. So that's a major part of like the introduction. You don't have to have one. You can always borrow one. I bet you could talk 10 people and 5 of them probably have a gun that you can borrow. So I have one that you're going to use. But again, you don't need some big fancy special top-notch $1,000 rifle, right? Like just a bare basic rifle with scope. You don't need to be shooting crazy distances. You know, in the spot that we set up today, what's the farthest you can shoot? 100, maybe 120 yards or something like that. It's not very far.
That's if you're first time hunting, you can even shoot out that far and
Yeah.
still be accurate.
Exactly. So, I mean, you really don't need something big and fancy. That introduction just to get into hunting is, you really can do it for a very affordable price. You don't need all the fancy gear and everything else. We're not sitting in a tree stand. We're not sitting in a blind. You know, you're going to borrow
Right
a
on the
gun.
ground.
We're just going to sit on the ground. We're going to be raw about it. It's just going to be good old-fashioned hunting. And I bet you we see, you know, a handful of deer, and I think there's a really good chance that you come out with something out of this.
Better
So-
chance than the guy with all the expensive gear and no deer, no sign of deer. Anything.
exactly. Put all his money into that instead of gas, driving around looking for spots. So the other thing with your clothing is making sure it's not silky, right? So like you talk about cold weather and hunting in the winter and stuff like that in December. You don't want to wear snow pants. You don't want to be walking out going every time you walk. You're making a bunch of noise. So trying just to avoid that, like Carhartt material. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. That's not noisy. That's what I would look for. You can probably honestly. You can buy something at Goodwill. Like, it's not that difficult. You can find any sort of jacket or pants you want. You could probably come up with something. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be camouflage. Brown. If you're hunting in the winter, white. Like, there's
right in with the snow.
That's right. I watched a hunting show a couple years ago, and the guys were in Kansas, and they were bow hunting, and they got dumped on with snow, and they're trying to spot and stalk deer, and they're in straight camouflage. So they're the only
Green,
brown
brown,
blob
dang.
moving around. They went to Goodwill, bought some extra large women t-shirts that were white, and put those things on over top of their cold weather gear, and that's what they were hunting in, was some $1.50 old woman t-shirt from Goodwill, and it worked fantastic. So you don't need the crazy gear. Does it help? Yeah, you can use it. You can get advantages from it later on, but just to start hunting, man, you can keep it pretty simple and basic.